Hello everyone and welcome to the Business of Data Monthly Leading Female Executive LinkedIn Live. Sorry for a few of you who are looking to find the link. We had a couple technical issues, but that's a great way for me to tell you that we are in fact live because we want to hear your voice feel free to use the comment section and get involved with all of your questions, thoughts, and especially those questions for us, please. Now, each month I meet with some brilliant female executives from the data and analytics space to chat about the biggest challenges and opportunities we face today. And like I say, we are doing this all live. Today, we're talking about business and stakeholder collaboration, a challenge that all of us face a fair amount of the time. So I am going to bring forward the wonderful panel of guests we have joining us today. Welcome, ladies. It's wonderful to see you all. I won't ask you to do individual introductions. Rather, let's kick off with the first question. And in the first 10 seconds or so, if you could just give us an intro, that would be wonderful. Now, in times as turbulent as we've been experiencing recently, having everyone on the same page is incredibly important. I'm sure we'll all agree. Now, how have you created successful partnerships with the business and key stakeholders that have navigated through these stressful times is the first question I would like to ask you all. So, Harleen, I'll come to you first if you don't mind.
Hi everyone, I'm Harleen Teffy, Head of the Campaign Analytics at BBC Global News. So I think at the moment it's a really unique kind of time where everyone's outside of their comfort zone and business strategies are somewhat outdated. So it's now important to form a new strategy and learn to adapt so that the business can start to move forward. And a crucial part for me particularly would be understanding specifically how you and your team fit in with achieving the end goal for the business. I think ultimately each team is working towards the same goal, so we really need to focus on positive collaboration. And in order for us to be truly successful, we need to have that cross-functional collaboration between the teams. And hopefully we can then better understand how we insert ourselves into areas to help the business progress.
Absolutely love that to kick off. Thank you so much, Harleen. Maritza, how about yourself? I know you are a big passion provider for this topic area. So what's your thoughts and how have you been doing it?
So hi everyone, I'm Maritza Curry. I'm the head of data for BNP Paribas Personal Finance South Africa. We trade as RCS Group in South Africa, so that's quite a mouthful. So I'm going to add on to what Harleen said, and I think, we kind of do the things that most data teams do. We've got a really good operating rhythm with our business stakeholders. So we do regular prioritization, collaboration around requirements, etc. But where we have filled some of the gaps in terms of that collaboration and co-creation is at a strategic level. So we have a monthly data steerco, and it's an executive steerco. The CEO and our C-level executives are on the steerco, and that's basically the highest level of authority for data analytics at RCS. And it's this steerco that makes decisions, strategic decisions around data and analytics, and really drive the data strategy at RCS. And then there's kind of this area between that operational level and strategic level that I think we often forget about. And that is where we execute our data strategy. So we are collaborating with HR on the data culture and how we can do the change management around our data initiatives. And also with learning and development around education and the Data Analytics Academy. And then lastly, and I think this is maybe sort of not unusual, but maybe not a business unit that we often collaborate with, and that is marketing. So marketing, fantastic, very creative. So they're helping us with the marketing of our data strategy and our initiatives, and also just helping us think through some of the creative side around the data analytics portal, for example, and how to visualize our information or, make it beautiful, etc. So we kind of, at this point, I think data and analytics is a team sport at RCS, and we include everyone, to be honest.
What I love there, Maritza, is about how you framed that with the marketing. It's not a department you would usually collaborate with, yet it makes so much sense too. And I'm so glad you mentioned HR as well. Now, Sathya Bala, who's the head of data governance at Chanel, who usually joins us, but unfortunately she had a clash today. We recorded a podcast last week that will be out in a few weeks' time. And we talked through the collaboration that she's been doing with her HR department around data governance and diversity in particular, where HR sometimes leads on outside consultancies when you have that ability to do fantastic work inside, but those collaborations and those communications perhaps aren't aligned to realize the potential of data analytics in your organization. And I think that's going to be a theme that we hear a lot today, that actually it's about uncovering that amazing value and potential that you have, but it's about joining those dots together. So thank you so much, Maritza. Joanne, how about yourself? Creating those successful partnerships, but then also maintaining them through what is a crazy time at the moment.
So, hi everybody, I'm Joanne Stonier. I'm the Chief Data Officer for MasterCard. First of all, we consider ourselves part of the business. So, but much like everyone else is saying, we collaborate with everyone. My team is really part of the business strategy in that we believe data strategy is part of business strategy. And so part of my team actually sits with other business teams as they're developing their business strategy, so we can think through what data is needed to actually execute the strategy. And so it's a little bit of a different model in that we are right there at the table as part of the business design as the strategy is being designed, so that data is actually part of it. And that includes HR. Some of the other teams that we partner with as we execute kind of the larger view and mandate of data includes, yes, HR, but it also includes our communications team. How do we want to have all of our employees thinking about data, right, in all of their jobs, in all of their positions, as data skills, right, are really going to be needed in almost every single employee's life cycle now as we move forward. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to change the conversation, in addition to some of the education and training that Maritza mentioned. We also partner, we also have a really interesting position because we're also considered a second line of defense. So one of the things that we have to provide is also risk management, right? Even as we're there for mostly innovation, we're also there to navigate data risk, right? So we also partner with our risk teams, whether that's the enterprise risk team, which is part of our finance team, but also with the legal teams, right? As different types of legal risk are beginning to be more and more well known and understood beyond privacy and information security risk. There are other types of data risk that we're beginning to spot, right? We've talked before on this panel about fake data, right? Data lineage, data quality risks, and all of those things are increasingly things that we need to bring to the table to speak with all sorts of our different colleagues across the firm so that they understand how those risks really play out in different business contexts. So collaborating on all of that is really important. But in this time, we were just chatting right before we went live about how different it is to work virtual, right? Amy in a minute is going to talk about her new job and what it's like to be onboarded, right, as a new employee. But all of us are working more virtual. It means that we need to confirm our understanding with each other, I think, differently. And then as we have done some acquisitions, we also realize that vocabulary is really important. People hear one thing, they hear data classification mean one thing, and we mean it a different way, right? We also have a language of our own as data professionals that we have to be careful that all of our business colleagues really understand what we're talking about. So those are some of kind of the tips, and following it up, right, with written documents and data flows and in a way that non-data professionals can understand it and understand either the governance, the risks, the analytics that we're providing so that it makes sense in their context, I think is becoming really important. And so I love that Maritza is working with the marketing team. I think that's great so that we can all tell our stories better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joanne. But just to quickly come back to on something you mentioned there about the business strategy and then the data strategy. For you, would it be better to just call it the strategy, the business strategy, the data strategy, they're the same thing? Or do you think they're worth in having them separate? What's your thoughts?
So, I believe they're part and parcel of each other, but much like all the other resources that a company puts together when they're putting together their business strategy, right? We talk about the financial strategy. we talk about the HR strategy, right? So we talk about the different types of resources necessary to execute a strategy. I think data is one of the resources that we have to actually talk about in executing strategy. And so we do it for finance, we do it for our people, we do it for our technology. I think we have to do it very obviously for data as well. This way it gets actually understood as its own asset class, and also whether or not we have to build certain capabilities, dashboards, or if we have to actually go and get data and information that we need in order to execute. So I actually like it being called out as what I call one of the assets that we have to deploy to actually execute the business strategy.
Love that. Thank you
I'm
so
interested
much.
in what my colleagues have to say on that topic too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mina, we'll come to you next. If you wouldn't mind, well, answering that question as well on your thoughts between the two strategies, but then your wider experience around successful partnerships.
Yes, I fully agree, Joanne, with you. And I really liked also the reasoning that you gave. I agree. Data is one of the resources, one of the assets that the business needs in order to accomplish the strategy and the vision. So definitely it's something that needs to be also looked into as a separate strategy, but building the business strategy. And I also think that ladies before me just very nicely explained all the different aspects, but maybe just to highlight that I see the core objective of any data and analytics team to actually help all the other business teams to succeed. So therefore, I think the most important for collaboration and building those partnerships is to find those other teams that you can really contribute and help them to succeed. And it can be the HR, because HR's goal or objective is to actually continuously develop the skills and the employee experience and the competencies within the organization. So putting the data literacy and the data skills into that plan is one important thing. So that's something that I've been doing in the past as well. Also the compliancy, corporate responsibility and compliance is very important. There also data is in the core. So I would say the key success factor is basically to find those partners in the other teams within the organization and work together, help them to succeed with the data.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mina. And then on to, finally, last but not least, Amy, who joins us after a short hiatus whilst she was getting her feet under the table at her very new job, which I'm keen to hear how this plays into this topic of mapping out relationships, understanding where that collaboration is, where it could go, where the bridges need to be perhaps built or rebuilt. Amy, how's it all going?
Thank you so much, Catherine. So I'm Amy Gershkoff-Bowles. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at TradeZ, which is an e-commerce company marketplace. And I previously was a 3-time Chief Data Officer before and had several GM roles as well before stepping into this role as COO at TradeZ. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about the discussion we were just having is sort of what the relationship is between data strategy and the business strategy overall. And Joanne said it really well, that data strategy is part of the business strategy. But I would actually take it a step further. And I think my sort of own career progression is sort of emblematic of this, which is that I think that data strategy and data-driven decisioning is actually just part of how all decisions should be made in any organization. And I think back to the late 90s and early 2000s. I don't know how many folks watching remember those days, but a lot of companies had an internet department. And it sounds funny to think about that, to have an internet department, because today nobody would have an internet department, because the internet is part of how everyone does their job, whether they work in product or marketing or technology or finance or HR. The internet is just one of the, sort of lifeblood of how we work in this sort of, modern era. And I think of data the same way. And I think over time, we're going to see more and more companies that are infusing data-driven decisioning across the organization. And so there won't necessarily need to be a sort of separate, dedicated data strategy, data engineering, data analytics, data science, because all of those skills and tools and assets are going to be part and parcel of how everyone does their job. And so in my role as COO, I'm running the day-to-day operations of the entire company, and I'm doing it in a very data-driven way. And so is the head of product, and so is the head of marketing, and so is the head of finance. Everybody is using data and analytics and data-driven decisioning to make all of their decisions every day. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more companies going this route of infusing that data-driven decisioning into the business in a very deep and meaningful way.
Absolutely. I think that is pretty much the goal of everyone on this call and probably everyone watching as well. And I know given the various organization sizes that we have both on the panel and watching, I think it'll change as to how quickly you're able to do that, what legacy you have, and the various things that are going to play into those challenges. But absolutely fantastic, Amy, and obviously congratulations on your new adventure. And I'm keeping an eye on time here. And what I would love to do is go background and ask you about some of the lessons that you've learned from perhaps the missteps or just general lessons when it comes to partnering with the business, perhaps things that didn't quite go to plan or things that went really to plan, but you just absolutely did not intend for it to go that way, and it kind of caught you off guard how successful it was perhaps. And then your calls to action for the audience to kind of learn from those lessons. So Amy, I'll start with you first on that one, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Catherine. So when it comes to especially collaborating in this all remote environment, I think one of the most important things that you can do is to create some sort of written document coming out of any meaningful and important strategic meeting that captures the shared understanding of what was decided. And this is particularly important in a remote environment because in the pre-remote days, most of us captured a lot of great information on a whiteboard. And we don't have that luxury today, but making sure the shared understanding, some folks use virtual whiteboards, but making sure there's a shared understanding coming out of the meeting of what was decided. And this is a bit to Joanne's point earlier as well, making sure that the language means the same to everyone in the room is also very sure that everyone really is on the same page when they hang up from their Zoom call. So that's the most important piece of advice I can offer folks.
I absolutely love that. And that can have a bit of awkwardness come with it, can't it? Because I think everyone wants to nod their heads on Zoom and say, yeah, we understand these gigantic words that the data guys are saying us. But actually, sometimes you have to work with the virtual environment that we have, because in person, as you're walking out the meeting, you can quickly go, you know what, Amy, what was that part again? Just reaffirm that for me. Whereas virtually, I think we have to really work hard to make sure those personal experiences that we perhaps can have, those encounters we can have in the office, translate online, whether that's via Teams or Slack or some more informal method where it means that the data and analytics leaders are as approachable as can be, so that we can ensure this communication can happen for both ways. So I absolutely love that, Amy. Thank you. Mina, how about you? What lessons can you share with us today on when it comes to collaboration and partnerships?
I fully agree with the language, and they're also ensuring that even when you hear somebody using the terminology, do make sure that they use it for the same purpose as you think, because I've also seen that the nice fancy data terminology, it's kind of sticks easily to people's everyday talks because it feels like it's something important and cool to talk about, but they don't necessarily really mean the same with the terminology as one would expect. So really making sure that everybody talks about the same thing when they talk about customer 360 or recommendation engine or master data or other terminology. The other thing that I've learned is that old habits die hard. So when you have built a kind of an advanced analytics and modern data team, and then you expect your team to be included in the business development, if the business is expecting that you are delivering reports based on their definitions, then that's when they involve you in the discussion, only when they actually have a clear understanding what kind of report they need, and then they order that from you. And that's really, it can be very challenging, especially on this remote type of work, to actually be there in the start of the conversation, to actually being able to impact the final solution rather than waiting for somebody to order something from you. So that's just definitely something that requires a lot of that marketing that Maritza was also mentioning earlier, that you really need to have the marketing strategy for your data and analytics team to sell the idea and kind of raise the awareness that we can actually do much more, and we can help you in much earlier state of your thinking process than at the end.
I mean, that's such a valuable point, Mina. We're not just talking about the collaboration, but the collaboration journey, right? Because as you say, you can end up coming in and being collaborative and everyone says, oh, isn't it great, the collaboration? But actually you might be sitting there thinking, well, actually, if you'd involved me 6 months ago, we could have done something way cooler, or it would have been far easier because I would have sorted out your data quality back then before you wanted to come in and me to work magic now. For a lot of us, I know that's the experience that we have. So that part of that journey is such a vital point. So thank you for raising it. I'm sure there'll be many people in the audience that are very much spiritually connected to that challenge and that lesson learned. So thank you. Joanne, what pearls of wisdom can you share with us on your lessons learned with collaboration?
So I think a lot of what Amina said is right. One of the things that I think we're also finding, though, is that we try to include everybody in design sessions virtually, like we would in a large community meeting that we would have had in person. And it doesn't always work because people don't always have the opportunity to speak up. And so while you want to do that, you also need to have smaller meetings. You also need to make sure that you are taking the time to have those smaller conversations so that it actually makes sense, right? So you want to make sure that you actually chunk things down, right? So that you actually give people the chance to react, especially after you've had the broad ideation sessions, so that you have that moment where different teams have the opportunity to weigh in and give their perspective. And so the documentation is super important. So I'm absolutely with Amy. You absolutely need some additional space to actually collaborate and not assume that the same way works the way it did when you were in person. And especially now, there was something that was said earlier, and I forget, I think Harleen, you mentioned this, that we're at a point now that companies are trying to pivot, right? We're trying to pivot to where we're going next, which is great. It's a lot more fun, right? We are moving forward. But because of that, there's also a pent-up demand on things that we did not maybe develop during kind of the past 18 months. And so I'm finding that we're designing multiple things concurrently. And so you need to keep an eye on the concurrency, as I'm calling it, of things that are getting developed at the same time, because they've got to work together. And so you need to have the ability to go across and let people in to know what's going on in adjacent spaces that they may not be directly involved in, but they need to be aware of. And so I'm seeing that those type of disconnects, it's not quite a disconnect of vocabulary, but if they don't understand some of those dependencies and what your team is handling or what your technology colleagues are handling, it's going to cause problems that they're not understanding that there's a very large vision that's getting moved forward now. And so those are some of the things that we're encountering, that we're realizing we have to communicate, or market, Marissa. So those are some of the additional watch outs and tips I have for this moment right now.
Absolutely, Joanne. It's certainly something I've heard before. Di Mays, who regularly joins us on the Business of Data from WPP, often mentions how she is almost like a plug to the community and a matchmaker within her internal business, because it's constantly knowing of what projects are going on and why they would need to match up and collaborate, but then how that collaboration is going to impact another thing, and actually having that wider ecosystem and infrastructure knowledge is so important. And then how we communicate that and how we keep it going, because that can be quite an overwhelming task, especially for the larger, more global companies as well. It just gets bigger and bigger, and you certainly don't want it to snowball into something uncontrollable. You want to keep it simple. Brilliant. Maritza, lessons learned. What are your thoughts?
So my most important lesson, and actually I think this is my most painful lesson, that I've learned about collaboration and co-creation between different teams, data office and the business, is decision rights. So, you know, if you're including so many different people with different requirements and different viewpoints, etc., you have that diversity, then inevitably you could have conflict of interest. And it's really important that you ensure decision rights right up front and make sure that everyone understands what their role is in this collaborative exercise. And if it is a sort of high profile or strategic project or initiative, make sure everyone agrees up front who's the person that's going to make that final decision if there is a decision to be made. And I suppose from a call to action, you know, it's all about people, and everything starts and ends with people. So have those conversations and just remember there's a real person at the other end of this thing that you're delivering, or in the data that you are using. So I suppose we should call it DQ, data intelligence. Just have empathy with both your customer and with your colleagues that you are collaborating with.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we always end up down a language route with data, which is why I find it so fascinating. But the word collaboration, for me, it feels like equality. It feels like Arthur and the Knights in the Round Table. But actually what you said there, Marissa, is so valuable, that actually in some forms of collaboration, it could be that there does need to be that head of the table who is, you know, commanding that project and who is overly responsible for the decisions making, holding the budget, but they're bringing in people to have the strength of the project, but ultimately that person does, or that function and department holds the reins. And I think that's such a key thing to have aligned right at the start. Really valuable. Got me really thinking on that one. Then Harleen, how about you? What are the lessons learned and perhaps missteps you've made on the way of collaborating with the rest of the business?
So I think it's important to remember that not everybody has the same priorities. So you may have stakeholders who have the same end goal, but your critical path could be entirely different. And I think this can create challenges, but I've learned how essential it is to be flexible and adaptable, particularly in recent times. It's also crucial to take all of these learnings from your missteps and make the necessary changes. So at the BBC, I've recently set up a data steering committee, which includes people from non-data backgrounds, but it just gives us the ability to all really understand how and where data should be applied in the business. But it not only aids with the collaboration, I think it also raises the profile of data and how vital it really is across various different departments.
Absolutely. Love that. Fantastic. And we've only overrun by about 2 minutes, Harleen. So thank you for that, for being so concise with your lessons learned there. Thank you so much. Ladies, I really must book in longer than half an hour because I always feel like we get to the end and I've got my timer going. Catherine, please wrap up very soon. Thank you for a fantastic discussion. There's such an interesting one, and certainly one we can revisit again in the future and dive a bit deeper in. And again, apologies for the live stream issues. We're going to get to the bottom of that, but I can see on my screen that a fair few people have still been able to join us. And of course, you can watch us back on demand as well. But for now, make sure you subscribe to the Business of Data. Follow us on socials, but also I'm going to pop up a screen in front of myself now. We do have the Global Business of Data Festival kicking off in December, our second one of the year. It would be wonderful to have you all join us. The registration link is in the description. Please do click and join us all for free. But until next time, we'll see you very soon. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time.